Welcome back to another episode of Survivor Worldwide. We're back to talk about the latest episode of Survivor South Africa, episode 14 here. And I've got a very special co-host. Like you guys can see, I don't have Riley with me here today. Sad about that. But we do have a legend of the game, someone that placed the third in the second season of Survivor South Africa, Amanda Hoosen. Amanda, it's great to meet you. Finally, we've been talking and chatting on digital messaging a few times in the past, but it's great to finally be able to talk to you. How are you?
I'm so good, Chris. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm loving this season, so I'm very excited to talk about the latest episode. It's kind of like the business end of things at this stage. So yeah, just happy to be chatting to you today. I know there's a bit of a time difference, so it's 10 o'clock here, and I think we're in New Zealand it's 6:30.
8, just after 8 p.m. and then it's
Okay.
around 6. Yeah, so it's about 8 p.m. and 6 p.m. in Australia. We've got one of our viewers here that watch us quite consistently saying that he's very happy that Riley's not on the show today, and I know that he's having a bit of a stab at Riley there. Chris Dixon, welcome to the live chat. But we have upgraded since we've got Amanda on.
That's funny.
Now, Amanda, you've played the show before. What is it like to be a past player that played one of the early seasons of Survivor South Africa, to see that, season 8, it's still going strong. It's still exciting to watch as well. How do you find that? How has the show for you evolved, and what is it like now to be a spectator at this stage instead of a player?
So it's kind of mind blowing on the one hand, because I feel lucky that I kind of got to play the game super early on. So my season was in 2007, and we played in Malaysia, and so it's been really interesting to see how the game has evolved just in terms of strategy, and because the fandom of the franchise has grown so much, there are true super fans who apply and get cast on the show. So they're students of the game. And in my season, it wasn't quite the same. So strategically, I think it's become a lot more exciting. Looking back on it, my season is fairly boring, quite frankly, in comparison to what we've seen in the last couple of seasons. I am a little bit more of a Survivor purist, though. So all these idols kind of throw me off. I think it's a little bit of overkill at times. The fire idol and the immunity idol and this idol, Nicole is like Oprah. Everybody gets an idol. So that's interesting for me to watch. And I have to say, and I know that a lot of people I've spoken to are going to be like, here she goes again. But on my season, we were on an island in Malaysia that was basically barren. So we literally, I think we had 2 meals on day 9 and day 18. So I do scream at the TV watching, especially this last season. There was food in every episode. And I hear them talking about how hungry they are. And I'm like, you guys have no idea. So I do think that at least the opportunity to win food is also a big game changer. But I have to say that the challenges are more interesting. The production value is amazing. And a little bit of trivia, Leroux Botha, who is the director of the current season, was not the director of our season. In fact, we had a different production company. And Leroux actually applied to be on my season, and he made top 25.
Oh, wow.
And so he never got to play the game, but look at him now. And so I
thank goodness.
Thank God. I know.
Thank goodness, because like he rather take over the show and lead it in the direction that he has. Because I think that I remember watching the early seasons and really struggling to watch it. Like similar to you, Survivor purist, but I found it slow and I found it very difficult. And then you had like half celebrities, half new players. I never really liked that vibe so much. I much enjoy where the show's gone now. So imagine how different the world would have been if Leroux Botha did end up playing the show with you.
I know. I'm also, I think everybody's really grateful. And I mean, and it's, the whole team at AfroCons, I think just has done the most phenomenal job of changing the way the game is played, the way that the viewer gets to enjoy the show. We really get sucked in as viewers. And I think that's what happens when you've got super fans directing it, as opposed to just people who are there for the production. Just a production job. And I think that that's really made a huge difference. And that's why the show's become so much more popular, I think, in the last couple of years. So well done to all of them. I mean, it's amazing. Hopefully I get to
100%.
play again one day, because I'd love to play with an Afrikaans production team. They're phenomenal. We also had a different host when we played in season 1 and 2. We had Mark Bailey, who actually has now moved to Amsterdam, which is ironic because my husband's from Holland. And so I'd love to actually get to play with Nico as the host as well.
Oh, that'd be awesome. And you kind of scratched off one of my normal questions that I asked towards the end of having a guest that, would you play again? And I kind of at this point feel like, anybody that is willing to come on a podcast and talk about the show, they're going to say, yes, I'm happy to come back and play the game again. And, I know that you're someone that is competitive as well. So your competitive juices must be flowing, seeing so many of these players play at the moment. And like you said, the show has got a bigger budget now. They're doing a lot of things different. It's a bigger show. So with that, the stakes have upped quite a bit. And what has your thoughts been about this season, being in South Africa? Do you feel like it sort of added a different flavor to it? Have you liked sort of the backdrop to this season? Because I think a lot of people probably feared coming into the season that having a show in South Africa, maybe it's not going to feel as special because, they're not out on an island like they would normally be stranded away from South Africa. What's your opinions been about the season so far?
So I actually have, to be honest, forgotten that it's being shot locally. That it's been shot locally. I think that they've done an amazing job of kind of making that, not really pinnacle to the whole Survivor experience. I know, you talk about playing the game again, and I haven't always felt that I was going to play again, because when I came off the island, people would ask me that all the time. And my response would be, I would play again because I know exactly what to expect. And I will never play again because I know exactly what to expect, because it's really hard. It sucks. Okay. The weather conditions, doesn't really matter where you are. The weather conditions are grueling. The hunger is real. It's not staged. And so I don't think that that's taken anything away from the Survivor experience. I think the survivors themselves would have liked to have gotten on a plane and gone somewhere a little bit sexier, or somewhere that was a little bit more foreign, just for that experience. And I can kind of relate to that, because it was the first time I'd been to Malaysia when I played. But I really think just in terms of the just viewing it as a past player, it's got all the elements that the game needs. I think the production team has done an amazing job of kind of making us forget that they had to do it locally. And because it was in a pandemic, we had one of two choices, right? No season, or an amazing season that gets shot locally. And so I think that they made the right call. I have been watching with bated breath, because I think that there have been some standout players this season. And yes. I must say, today's.
Can I just jump in before you, just before you talk about the standout players? I want to also address my own opinion about the fact that this is in South Africa. For me personally, it was never going to be an issue, but I agree with you. I haven't noticed that, the show, like, you kind of forget that it's in South Africa because it really does look like an island location. They're still close to the beach. For me, it's been refreshing because I'm so used to the US Survivor, the Australian Survivor, and even Survivor South Africa recently. It's always either in Samoa or Fiji. So it becomes very predictable, and the backdrop, even though it's subconscious, you kind of feel like it's the same thing. So it's looked quite refreshing having this lush green jungle in the background, I think has been actually sort of added to the season. But I think the most important thing, regardless of where a season actually plays, is that you want to be part of a good season, a season that fans are going to remember, a season that fans will think highly of. And a lot of the times, what really makes a good season is a good cast. And that sort of segues into what you're going to talk about right now, because, one of the things that myself and Riley really want to do in the off season is we want to do our own fantasy cast of who we think should come back for Survivor South Africa All Stars. Who would we want to see? And obviously everybody's opinions are going to be different. But this season, if we're going to limit ourselves and we cap it down to 5 or 6 players, it is going to be extremely hard to do because there's so many good players this season that I wouldn't mind seeing come back and play the game again.
No, 100%. I think that there were talks of potentially having an all-star season now, for season 8, but I think it was too soon, and I think that we needed this crop of outstanding Survivor strategists to kind of help make the all-stars decision going forward. And I also think that there aren't as many players from the early seasons that I think, really kind of deserve to be there. And so I think it was very necessary for us to have, I would say, the last 3 or 4 seasons where I think the bulk of any kind of all-star cast should be picked from. And yeah, I mean, I just think that, as I said, people are so much more astute with regard to the game at the moment. And they've really studied it, and so it's just added a whole new dimension, I think, to the way that the game gets played at the moment. So I think it would be exciting, and I think it would be probably one of the hardest seasons to play, which is what All Stars is supposed to be, right? But yeah, this
100%.
season I've just been so impressed with what I've seen, and some of the things are so small, but they mean so much, and some of the things are quite big, but then they didn't really have an impact. So it's been really interesting for me.
It's been fun to sort of dive into every little piece of editing and little thing that you
Yeah.
saw on the show, and we'll definitely get into that soon. I want to acknowledge that Riley, even though he can't be here today, he's also known as Snuffed. He's got another YouTube channel as well. He's saying sorry that I can't be there tonight, but sad to see Kiran go. Kiran was Riley's man. Like he had Dino as his number one and Kiran as his number two, and he's now lost both of those two. And Kiran was really in a tough spot here in this episode, Amanda, because, he's been sort of playing in the shadows for quite a long time, pulling the strings. And I've been saying on the show for a very long time that I feel like Kiran is the person who's the really master strategist behind the duo of Tyson and Kiran. And Tyson is getting a lot more of the credit via the edit. But if you're someone that is astute to the game and you've watched a lot of it, you'll see that Kiran is someone that probably strategically, and I'm not taking anything away from Tyson because I do enjoy him as well, but Kiran probably was that little bit more of a well-rounded player. And then looking at this episode, a couple of things go against Kiran here. Firstly, Chappies wins again for the fourth time, and we'll definitely talk about that. And then secondly, Tyson ends up injuring himself, and that Anela and Nicole are going to try and stick tight at this point. There's no point for them to go against each other. So Kiran really had his back up against the wall here, and he was also the Minister of Rice or Finance, Minister of Finance, keeping the rice away from Chappies to really antagonize him. So what has been your impressions of Kiran, and what is the eulogy for you on Kiran? Do you think that he did make the upper echelon of great players like he wanted to? He wanted to leave a bit of a mark and a legacy on the show.
So this is probably like one of the saddest moments for me to be on a podcast, because he was one of my winner picks. And I think that Kiran has played a legendary game. He absolutely deserves a spot in the history books. He, as far as I'm concerned, is at the upper echelon of players that we've ever seen play the game, not only in South Africa, but I would even say he's very competitive against any other seasons globally as well. I do think that Tyson gives himself more credit than he deserves. He gives himself a lot of credit. And I love Tyson, don't get me wrong, and I'm not taking anything away from his game, but I do think that he's overplaying, the game he's actually played. It hasn't been that great, okay? And I think Anela has also, I think, made a poor decision, because he doesn't stand a chance going up against Chappies, quite frankly, if they do get to the final three. So Kiran, for me, like you said, he found himself in an unplayable situation, given that he didn't win immunity. But, you can't take that away from Chappies either, because, that's how he's kept himself in the game, and Kiran had that opportunity. If I'm not mistaken, Kiran played an idol at the last one that he didn't really have to play, but I guess it's because he had to play it at that point, because there's
Yes.
no idols anymore. So it's unfortunate that the timing of when his idol had to leave his pocket was a week ago, when he didn't really need it, and he kind of really needed it today, which is totally just part of the game. But I love that Kiran went out, no regrets, no hard feelings. And I love that he kind of had a very open and honest and transparent conversation. So that already tells me how good he is at reading the room. And it's difficult to do that when you're in the game and when it's this late in the game, because your head is all over the place. And so I just think he's kept his cool. He's had a very clear strategy from day one. And unfortunately, sometimes the greatest players don't win this game. And I think that, they would have been, quite frankly, silly not to vote him out. So if I was a player, I would have made exactly the same decision if Chappies wasn't a viable target. So as a player, I would have made the exact same decision. As a viewer, it's really sad. And I had a BFF when I was playing the game in Angela. And when she got voted out, because it was kind of like Amanda or Angela, so very similar kind of situations I can relate. And when she got voted out, I was absolutely gutted, and I cried, I think, for like an hour. And so when I saw them, have this amazing bond and forge this incredible, powerful duo kind of relationship, I loved it. But that's dangerous. The most dangerous thing in Survivor is a couple that is unbreakable. And unfortunately, Tyson and Kiran maybe should have tried to hide that relationship a little bit better. But Anela also screwing up the League of Shadows. So there's so many things that kind of played into the fact that he was ultimately the best choice in terms of who to vote for. But yes, sticky situation, but what an absolute legendary game. And he will definitely be remembered. If he doesn't come back for All Stars, then I don't know. Then we've got it wrong.
And I'll be the first person to admit here, I was sleeping on, like, I wasn't sleeping on his game, but I wasn't high on his game. Like, I was like, because the edit only showed me a little bit in the early stages. So pre-merge, I even told him that in the exit interview, because I had an exit interview with him yesterday. Super nice guy. And I said to him, you grew on me after the merge. As we started seeing more and more of your game, if I had to make the decision early on and who are the players that I would like to see come back, I don't know if pre-merge he would have been one of those players. But after the merge, he just continued to make big moves, continue to really run that alliance of his with Warda and Tyson. And there's a lot of things in how he played the game that didn't even make the TV show. So if you're listening to this, go and check out the exit interview that's going to drop tomorrow with Kiran, because I do ask him a few tough questions. Like, one of the questions were, why did you not think about turning against Tyson? Why did you not think about, talking to Chappies? There's a few things that he potentially could have done, but he talks to that in regards to the things that we potentially couldn't see on the show. I also just want to acknowledge a few of the people here in the live chat with us at the moment. Reno Davids, welcome to the live stream. I don't know if I've seen you here before. Always nice to see new names pop up. You're saying that I feel they should do one more season and then do an All-Stars for season 10. And I agree with that. Season 10, I think, is a great number. To do it on season 9, maybe one too soon, get a few more new players in there. I think it's a good way to go. Dylan Faree, who's a frequent listener of ours, great to have you back here. Dylan says they should do an All-Stars at season 10 or 11 or even 12 for the case that many of the pre-season 5 people don't want to return. And it's obviously been quite a big gap there as well. And another person here that I haven't seen before, Tokyo WTF, I wonder who Nicole and Anela would boot first if neither Chappies or Tyson wins immunity next. And that is a good one to explore, Amanda. I think personally, between me and you, it's a tough one, because looking at the players left in the game, I don't disrespect Anela and Nicole. I think that all, if you get to the final 4, you've done more right than what you've done wrong. It takes skill to get there, and you should always give respect to people that have gotten there. But I also look at the TV show and how it's been edited. Whose story are we following here? And I've been saying from day one, we're following Tyson's story and we're following Chappies' story for most of the case. I didn't think Chappies was going to get this deep, and Tyson I've had as my winner pick pretty much since the merge, but I'm starting to wonder if Chappies can do the impossible and win a 5th immunity win here in a row to equal the record for South Africa and also equal the record around the world in regards to most immunity wins. But let's say he doesn't win that next immunity. Who, with these two great resumes, if you were out there, Amanda, who do you think is the biggest threat at the end of the day to win this now, since we're getting into the pointy end of the game?
Yeah. So I think it's going to be Chappies, quite frankly. I don't think he has to win next week. I think that if he doesn't win, he's made such a great case to Anela and Nicole as to why the 3 of them should be at the end, because I don't think Chappies has the best relationship with a lot of the jury members on the one hand, but he also has an amazing resume with regard to his physicality. And I think he has also got a strategic storyline that he could lay out to the jury, I think, with a lot of effectiveness, and win them over. And I think Anela, I think, feels as though if Tyson is there, right? Kiran is gonna get in the jury's ear, and Kiran is really good at influencing
Yes.
people, and he made that very clear when we saw the last snippet of the show, in his sort of on the fly interview, where he said, "I'm going to make sure that the jury votes for the winner that I pick," and I believe him. And so if Tyson's there, it wouldn't help Anela's game at all. It wouldn't help Nicole's game. And I also think that they would be silly not to take Nicole to the final three, because she already talked herself out of the title at the last tribal council. She kind of already said, listen, outwit is not my thing. You never say that if you want to win this
Yes.
game. You never
Yes.
ever say that you can't do any of those three things. You have to be able to talk about the outwitting, the outplaying, the outlasting in an equal sort of fashion. There's got to be a balance across the three. So she's already talked herself out of the title as far as I'm concerned, which makes me question her desire to really want to be there and really want to win. I don't care if what she said was true or not. Lie
Yeah.
if you need to. Say whatever the hell you need
Can
to
I
say.
defend? Can I defend her a little bit here? Can I defend her a
Yeah.
little? Because, like, listen, I haven't spoken much of Nicole's game because most of the time we haven't seen much of her game, and I do feel bad because one of the things I do think she wants to be there, and the reason that I'm saying that is because whenever she does the challenges, even in this episode, she never quits. You know, she gets
Oh,
up there every single time and she tries to get that key, even though she's too short to get there. She takes on Chappies when everybody else is sitting out in this season. She seems to be a true competitor from the side that she really wants to play hard, win the game and that. But I don't think, and I could be wrong, and Nicole, if you're listening to this, I'm sure I'll get to meet you and do an exit or final interview with you at some stage. I feel like she may not have been the biggest fan coming into the show, and she doesn't get the strategic, social, dynamic part of the game as well as she probably should. But I do think that after playing a season like this, and you'll probably know this yourself, Amanda, when you get so far into the game, if you were to play this game again, you will have experience and knowledge that you didn't have the first time playing the game. So she'll be a lot more dangerous if she does get an opportunity to play the game in the future. But I do agree with you. I got the sense from that I'm looking at a final tribal council 0 vote person based on that. And Nico sort of asking her this questions and grilling her a little bit. And I definitely want to get into how Nico addressed Chappies, because for the first time this whole season, Chappies was, you wouldn't know this, but we had a draft pick going into this, myself and Riley, we had our teams, and Chappies was my number one pick. He was my guy pick, the number one guy pick, but I picked him because I love big characters. Like, I'm a Tony Vlachos fan. I like Luke Toki. I like David Canut. If you watch Australian Survivor, you know, I like the bombastic out there players. I love Jack Berger because he was such a under the radar scrappy player, you know, and I love those types of characters. And I thought he would be that. And for the longest period of time, I've put it in my head that he can't win. There's no way he can win.
Yeah.
Don't even put it out there. You're going to be disappointed when he loses, because there's no way he can win all the way till the end. But I've got to say, after this episode, I actually think he could win this now. Like, I mean, Tyson is injured. Anela and Nicole have not beaten him in a very long time. He's making food for himself. You know, he's not sharing it, and we'll get into that as well.
Yeah.
But, you know, I think he's getting stronger and stronger as the game is going on. And dare I say, I think he can win the next immunity challenge and potentially knock out Tyson to win the show. And this will be the first time, if Riley's still in the chat, he can back me on that. I've never put Chappies at number one up until this point, but I'm starting to become a believer.
Yeah, no, I actually I'm doing a fantasy league as well, and I picked him actually as the winner, not necessarily because I want him to win, but just because I think he's playing a winner's game, and I kind of got that sense in the sort of pre interviews, because, you know, we were all choosing blindly. I did pick him as the winner, and then halfway through the season I thought, oh, maybe I made a mistake, because I wasn't sure that he was gonna, because he was just not everybody's favorite. And just to your point about Nicole, what makes a great Survivor player? It's wonderful to be able to be physical and win immunities, or try your hardest 10 times to jump and catch the key. That's cute, and it's obviously part of the game. But the physical thing is really one component of a well-rounded sort of game. You can't play this game if you don't remember that it's a social game, that it requires strategy, that it's about relationships. and it's about building that resume in all of the buckets of the game. You've got to outwit, outplay, not last. And I think it's very short-sighted, especially at this stage in the game's popularity. It's very short-sighted to apply to be on the show and think, oh, I just want to go there and do the challenges. That's not what Survivor's about. I never won a single immunity, individual immunity, and got to final three. And it was really my social game, because I'm not the most physical. And I was 27 then. I'm older now, so I don't even know how that's gonna go. But I wasn't the most physical player. And
older but wiser, Amanda. Older but wiser,
maybe, yeah. But that that wasn't my strength. But I also wasn't a schmuck in challenges completely, right? And so you've got to have a balance of both. And I think that's why Chappies is at this particular point positioned to win, sort of almost predictably, because he ticks all the boxes. And every time he's in front of that jury, he's making sure that they know that. And I think that even though people don't like him, I also believe that super fans will still vote for someone that they believe deserves it, whether I like you or not. So,
it's a very good point.
Maturity in the game as well. And so that's why I think about next week. I don't know if he has to win. I think he's done a great pitching job to Anela and Nicole about why he's the best person for them to go to the final three with. And I think that even if Tyson gets there, I still think Chappie stands a good chance to beat Tyson. Because to your earlier point, Kiran is really the mastermind, and I think Tyson's kind of giving his gameplay a little too much credit. But I love you, Tyson.
Now, I want to go back to some of the comments that we're getting coming in here. Chris Dixon says that he loves Angela as well from your season, and he said he cried when Angela left. So you've got a fellow supporter here in the channel, and Chris Dixon is all the way from Perth in Australia. So your season is making its way over to Australia as well. And then Jenny in the chat says that, Jenny, welcome back to the live stream. Always good to have you here. Amanda, can you tell Jenny a little bit about your season without spoiling it? And will you play All Stars? You might have missed the first part where you sort of answered that question already.
Yeah, no, sure. So I won't give any spoilers, but I was saying at the beginning of the show that my season was obviously in 2007, right? So the game's grown and evolved so much since then. And it was quite a boring season, to be quite honest, in comparison to the kind of strategic gameplay that we're seeing now and that we've seen over the last couple of seasons. It was also produced by a different production company, so you're probably going to be a little bit surprised at the diametric sort of
different host.
Yeah, different host, different director, and so. But I still think that there are some gems in my season. There were some great moments. We had an individual who I believe was the first person to make fire without flint. Globally, I think he was even interviewed by CBS after that happened, and so I think he was a bit of a trendsetter in my season. So you'll get to see that, and I also think that there was a really interesting moment when we merged, because we literally had a merge of 8 people, and 4 people on this side were in an alliance from day one, and 4 people on the other side were in an alliance from day one. So that became quite an interesting tribal. And then I think ultimately the right person deserved to win. The other sort of piece of an anecdotal thing is that I believe it was Grant that played. He was actually an alternate. So he actually wasn't originally cast to play. And then he ended up getting the call like the day before. And then there was also a person who was voted into the cast by the South African public, which they haven't done since, which I also thought was kind of cool and interesting in my season. So I won't give anything else away, but I loved it. And would I play again? Yes. Our season was in Malaysia, so I'd love to go to somewhere a little sexier than the Wild Coast Sun. But we also spoke about the fact that hasn't really impacted our viewership and the fun we've had watching the season. I actually don't care where it is. I'll go play that game no matter where it is. I take that back. But yeah, give it a watch.
And we've got Dylan here in the chat saying that if Chappies doesn't win next time, he thinks it's goodbye, Chappies. And I do agree. I know you feel like Chappies might be safe, but I really think that Chappies is in that point now of the game where he's won 4 in a row. People have been trying to get him out time after time. He's got certain definite votes on the jury in Nesu and also Santuni, which is dangerous. So depending on who he goes to the final with, I do kind of doubt that they want to sit next to Chappies in the final. But maybe, just maybe, because there's so much hatred, Dylan, or not hatred, but dislike. Hatred's such a strong word. Dislike within the current tribe because he's stealing food and he's being a bit antagonistic, in the show itself. Maybe they're misreading the jury here a little bit. And like Amanda said, they might think that he's someone they can drag to the end and that they'll ultimately win against him because he's been doing all these things. But, we see, and this is where, in my mind, I've put 2 and 2 together. Nico is really giving Chappies, and some people might hate this, but you've got to remember that we only see edited bits of the show, and Nico's asking everybody these questions about, what have you done that's been outward? I'm sure he asked that to Tyson and Anela as well, but we're seeing an edited show that's only showing us the bit where he's asking this of Chappies, but he's also giving Chappies the platform to speak about, because the one flaw I've had in Chappies' game so far is that, he's outplayed everybody and he's starting to outlast everyone, but has he strategically really run the game? Has he been the person who's pulled the strings and decided who's going home? He hasn't. But there is another part of outwit, and that part of outwit is the fact that he's, going out there, working harder than anyone else, which is a thing I really respect when it comes to Survivor players. It's why I love Tony. Tony getting up in the middle of the night with the husk, making fire, looking for idols in the middle of the night. And Chappies is doing similar things here. He's going out, he's catching mussels, he's catching crabs. He's got Chappies' diner in his secret location. If Spur, Steers, and all those restaurants in South Africa doesn't jump on this opportunity for him to be a part of some advertisements in the future, they're missing a massive opportunity here. But, Chappies is doing a lot really to outwit in that sense, because if they're down, if they're low on food and he's got a bit more nutrition in his body, then at the end of the day, he's got a better shot. I mean, he's already a physical threat, but going into these challenges, he seems to be running off a lot more fuel than them. And, you consistently see Kiran, you consistently see Tyson being really annoyed by this, but, at the end of the day, they still have the same opportunity as him to go out there and get food. What has been your view in regards to this side of Chappies that we're seeing where he really looks out for himself in the game? Do you see this as a negative or a positive? Because it is quite a thin line that he's sort of treading at the moment, since it is a social game.
Yeah. So we had a food stealing incident on our season. And at that point, obviously years ago, I was mortified. I was like, this is horrible. Your mama didn't raise you right. How can you do that? And I've kind of got a different perspective now, because I think that you kind of have to do what you've got to do, right? And I mean, he really is surviving. So his Chappies diner move is very Tony building a bunker-esque. It's got that, flavor to it, which I actually really respect. I think it's TV gold. As you said, I think that there's a huge marketing opportunity there. So I actually don't hate the fact that he's playing sort of a selfish game as a super fan. So if I was on the jury, I wouldn't, there wouldn't be, a reason not to vote for him. I do think though that, if Tyson, I think you said if Tyson wins immunity next week, you guys think that Chappies is going to go. And one of the things I tweeted a while ago, and I can't remember which episode it was, but remember there was an episode where everybody voted for Chappies, and I think between Kiran and Tyson, they gave him an idol, and they put it around Chappies' neck. And my tweet was, did they just give Chappies R1 million? Because how did Chappies get them to do that? And you know how difficult it is in the game of Survivor to get someone to play their idol to save you. And I
100%.
think that is a huge move that I don't think the jury's going to look at and sort of not give it the gravitas that a move like that deserves. It's extremely difficult to get someone to do that. And so for me, when I saw how he was able to do that and didn't do it, in an outlandish way, he almost made it think it was their idea, which is the other way that you can play this game, which makes it look like it's very under the radar. And so from that point on is when I started to say, hang on a second, this guy is like super clever, because nobody even really flinched when that happened. And I'm like, just giving away idols now? Like, is that how it works? So I think that we can't discount that there has been some strategy early on that I think he's going to remind the jury about if he gets there next week. So we'll see. I mean, we obviously all, we're predicting these things, and just to your point, because we don't know what's going to happen, but just to your point, tribal councils are hours long. When we were in Malaysia, for example, there were I think it was 11 other countries that were filming Survivor or a version of Survivor at the same time, and one of the tribal council sets was being used by multiple countries. So one night our tribal started at like 9 p.m. and I think we had tribal until about 2 a.m. And what the audience gets to see is literally like 10 minutes of that, if not less. So to your point, I think he's getting a winner's edit as well. And I think we know enough about the way that, the production.
But Nico isn't helping him. The whole point here is because I've seen people with their tinfoil hats on saying, Nico is showing favoritism by letting Chappies speak this way. And I don't think that's the case. I think Nico gives everybody the opportunity. I think Nico, in my opinion, and I'm biased, I'm a South African, I love the South African franchise, but I think he's one of the best hosts, if not the 100%. Best host at the moment. And for me, I love how he deals with Tribal Council, how he organically let people talk, without a lot of the time speaking over them. And I sometimes feel like certain hosts, which I won't name, they sometimes try and take control of the game more than, that the show is not about Nico, it's about the players. And I do feel like he lets that sort of come across. And I think that he really gets them to think about their answers, the way that they're acting. If Tyson's saying, or Kiran saying something about Chappies being selfish, then he makes them think, well, is he being selfish? You've got the same opportunities. The wild coast is out there. Why are you not going and finding these same crabs and mussels like he's done? And there was this hilarious bit of conversation at the end between Kiran and Chappies as well about the amount of calories that you get when you get a crab, and is it really helping? A calorie count on there. And I think it was just funny. And then Chappies being, he is a motivational coach, and I think business is going to be booming for him after this, because regardless of if he wins the show or not, he's going to go down as one of the all-stars of Survivor South Africa, and I'd be shocked if he's not back to play another season if he doesn't win. If he wins, Chappies, if you're listening to this, don't go back for a non-winner season, because if you go back to All-Stars and you win a show, I always think the target's just too big on winners going 100%. Back in an All-Star season. But, I kind of lost my train of thought there, but this is what I was going to say. Chappies, at the end of the day, sort of turning it back, saying too many people in life look at the difficulty of things before they look at what is potentially there to be gained. And he's got such a positive mindset. How can you not like Chappies? I mean, there's been times where he's been attacked by other people, not physically, but verbally been attacked by them on the show. And he's always been so gracious in the way that he's dealt with that. And it does seem like throughout this whole season, people have been against Chappies prior to the merge. It's why I've never thought, he's a bad player. I just didn't know how he was going to get there, because so many people knew he was a threat from the beginning. And that's his case at the end, isn't it? Because he's going to be like, from the third or fourth day in the game, people wanted to come after me. They took Paul out to weaken me. They consistently try to get me out of the game or weaken my position in the game. So to your point, he had Tyson save him with an idol. He had Anesu, who was very close to him throughout the game, giving him a tribal council pass. That's another thing again, someone willing to give him more. And then Santoni was extremely loyal to him as well in the game throughout, and told him all these different secrets. So he did have a social game, even though sometimes he hasn't strategically sort of maneuvered some of the moves, because the sort of the power hasn't always been in his side. But he has played definitely an impressive game. So to me at this point, Tyson or Chappies, based on what we're seeing, they look like either one of these two are going to win. And how great is it to still have both of these big players in a Final Four going into next episode? And let's talk a little bit, because we had a comment here somewhere, just see if I can find it here, from Tokyo WTF says that Survivor South Africa editors have edited so many decoy winners this season, so I wouldn't be surprised at neither a Tyson or Chappies win. Imagine if Anela came back from the behind here and still won the show. Could you see an Anela win? I mean, we won't spoil it, but we all know what happened in Survivor South Africa season 6. So, you might not know who the actual winner is going to be. And could Anela still surprise us after making such a big blunder last episode, where he basically told Kiran about the blind side as well?
Yeah, so here's my take on Anela, because and again, to your point, if you get to the final four, you did something right. Okay, you did a lot more right than you did wrong. So mad respect to all four of these players. But I think that one of the worst strategies, or at least the one that I think is the least respected in the survivor world, in the survivor community, as far as survivor fans and players are concerned, is the flip-flopper. And I don't know really many winners that have had sort of this flip-flopping strategy that have been successful. Because I think it's the one strategy that people don't actually respect. And I think with Anela, he was, you know, there was a meme of everybody's flip-flops, and they said if Anela, if this was a person, it would be Anela, because there was so much flip-flopping happening. So I don't think he really has a great chance. He might get 1 or 2 votes if he gets to the end, but I don't think he stands a great chance, because I think his flip-flopping has been extreme. It's been outrageous. We've all seen people switch alliances when they're at the bottom of the totem pole to try to get on top. I mean, that's one thing. But I think he's had this consistent back and forth, and who you with and who aren't you with, etc., etc. And at some point, even when he was in his individual interview, and he said something like, "But this is really who I'm going to vote for," and he's talking to the audience, I didn't even believe him at that point, because I was like, "Are you sure you're telling me the truth?" So I really had my doubt that he was actually going to vote for Kiran, right down to the last minute. So I don't think he's got a good chance of winning, because I don't think this jury is going to award the sole survivor title to someone that's played such a flippy floppy game, and not really owned his game, if you get what I'm trying to say. So
let me put
that he's used, but I don't think it's going to work.
So let me lay the case for an Anela win, right?
Okay,
we're very like, and I've at some points I haven't focused on Anela at certain points, but he's been one of those people that he always gets airtime. Every episode you check in with Anela at least once, and that's normally a good thing for a winner. We've seen him be very deceptive at times, stealing the food. You're quite right, flipping back and forth as he needs to in the game. But also Anela's case is that for a long part of the game, he was a lone soldier, because he got absolutely swapped into a tribe, into a minority position with Amy and Sean, and he had to work his way from the bottom to survive that part of the game. I thought they focused more on Amy at that point, sort of showing what she did, but Anela still had to be very much aligned with Amy to get out of that situation. He then lost both of Amy and Sean in the other flip, and he was on his own, and he needed to make new deals to try and survive to the merge. And then when he got to the merge, he was loyal to Rhaenyra the whole time until Rhaenyra was no longer there. Then he really had a free license to start jumping a little bit more back and forth to get to the end. And for both Anela and Nicole to survive in the position that they were in, I believe at that point it was 6 versus 2 when they were still left in the game. It's pretty impressive. The one thing I do think is against Anela is that if Anela goes up against Tyson or Chappies, he does lose, and we're assuming that the final 4 will definitely be a final 3. Do we know if it's a final 3? What if it does come down to a final 2, and potentially someone like Anela goes up against a Nicole? Does he have a chance against Nicole in that situation? Because I feel like he's done more, and again, no disrespect to Nicole, I think that she's probably a great person that played a really good game, but I do think Anela's game is better than Nicole's game. If I had to rank it right now, I would probably be very close between Tyson and Chappies, to say, because Chappies have had the wins, the immunities, great resume, and like we've spoken about all the other things that he's done really well so far. Tyson, really from a strategy point of view, sort of always knowing where the votes were going to go, who was going to go home. He's been pretty strong in that sense. And then probably Anela I would put as the third person based on game at the moment. And then Nicole I really don't think has got a chance at this point. So is there a possibility that he could still win if we get a blindside? Do we know for a fact it is a final 3? Or, I know jury numbers wise, we might end up with an equal amount of people on the jury. So maybe that's why it will be a final 3, so that we can't have a draw. But just throwing it out there, is that a possibility for him potentially to win this game?
I think it's a possibility. Look, I think the way that you've just laid out the case for Anela is going to boil down to how well he's able to articulate that to the jury. I don't know that he views his own game in the way that you've kind of just described it, or that the sort of data points that you've used to motivate for that is what he's actually going to be able to articulate to the jury. I think, to be honest, when you play this game, those jury moments are so important. If you're really a good salesperson, then you can actually win. I mean, if Nicole finds a way to change the narrative that she created in the last tribal, I still think she can win. But she's going to have to be super smart about how she does that. And it's going to have to be extremely convincing. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to boil down to who's sitting in that chair, and you're literally having a conversation with that jury, because jury members often, at least in my experience, they come into a tribal kind of with an idea in their minds of who they want to win the game. And I've seen it happen so many times where that last tribal changes their minds. So I think anybody can win. To your point around final three, and I actually thought about this. So next week is the penultimate episode, right? So they're going to go from four
I
to
believe
three.
so, yeah.
And then the finale is the week after.
The week after, which is what's confusing me as well. Why do we have it in two?
Which is why what you're saying is very interesting, because they can't just have a whole finale with the final three at the beginning of the show. So it's very possible that there could actually be a final two. So just in my season, for example, there was no final three thing. It hadn't even happened in the US yet. Or it had happened in the US, but it didn't happen in my season. So me being third was also kind of gut wrenching, because I think if I'd gotten in front of a jury, I think I would have been able to convince them to give me the title and to walk away with it. But that wasn't my season. So it was quite heartbreaking to be third and the last member of the jury. But they may go back to that kind of a format, because then you've got to, and I think also, to be honest, with Durao getting like 0 votes last season, it might also be a motivation for them to say, you know what, let's actually just get the top 2 in. So I think if I count the episodes, count the numbers, and think about how it's going to play out, it's quite likely that it might be a final 2.
Yeah, I just thought about this, and
to the castaways, because they keep talking final 3, and so that might be a surprise.
Yes. 100%. And I just thought about this, and Tokyo kind of stole my thunder here. There is also an opportunity where they could boot a jury member to make it possible, because in some of the international versions of the show, before you go into the final tribal council, if you win the last immunity or the last reward, get the opportunity to eliminate a jury member. So the more I think about it, and Riley and I spoke about this 2 or 3 weeks ago, we were very convinced that no, we will have a final 3 based on the numbers. But I actually think that they might be in for a final blindside. And what I do like about that, Amanda, is that it keeps the game fresh. So with Riley not being on here today, I can put the Reality Pop Survivor Worldwide stamp of approval on a final 2, because he's not for final 2s. He hates it. I like final 2s. But I don't. I like the fact that they change it, keep the players guessing. When the game is too predictable, you can plan for it. So having a final 2 this season and then a final 3 again next season, I think makes the game interesting. And what will happen if that happens? And if that happens, technically you have someone like a Chappies who could win the next one, equal the record, and he could go further and break the record, because he still has that opportunity to potentially go further. And at this point, like I said, you've got Tyson who's injured. I would actually, if I was Chappies, I'd keep Tyson in the game just based on that. If it's a bit risky, but I mean, if Tyson can't run properly, if he's struggling on those physical challenges, you might be able to beat him quite easily as well, compared to like Nicole or an Anela. Nicole specifically has been really good, especially in endurance. I think Nicole could be a real threat here going to the end game.
Yeah, no, 100%. Look, I think that's also, besides the fact that Kiran was a huge threat, but there was a huge motivation to keep Tyson in the game, because Tyson's injured. And I know that he's been cleared by medical, but the smallest things, in the game of Survivor, from an injury perspective, you don't heal the way you would heal at home. So even if you get coral cuts, for instance, on the back of your legs, you can't keep those dry, and so they become real niggly irritants, even though they're not dangerous, but it does impact your ability to perform. So I think there was a huge motivation, if they had to choose between Kiran and Tyson, to keep Tyson in. He's not going to heal the way he would if he was at home, if he was eating, the way he would be normally, etc., etc. So there's a huge motivation. I agree with you for Chappies. If there is another challenge, sort of looming in the future, to keep someone who's injured around. The only question is that the trade-off of potentially him having so much support on the jury? Because like Kiran said, he's going to influence the jury, and I think he can, to vote for whichever winner he picks. And so, I love that about Kiran because he's kind of still playing the game. You know what I mean?
Yes.
He still wants to
Yes.
influence. He still wants to influence the game and the outcome of the game. So I think it's still too risky to go with Tyson for that reason. And I don't think Kiran has a particular, I guess. I don't think he's got anything against Anela, but I don't think he's willing to give him the money, and I don't think he's got anything against Nicole either. But I think what Kiran does have ultimately is respect for Chappies and respect for the run that he's had. And so for me, if Chappies takes Tyson, Tyson wins. If Chappies takes Anela or Nicole, Chappies wins.
Yeah, it's really funny. We've got Brinification, very welcome to the live stream again over here, saying, I love a final two. Imagine if Anela makes a woo type of decision and takes Chappies to the end, if there is that type of situation. We can only speculate at this time. We don't know if it's going to happen, but now it's got me excited. I think the producers have got something extra in store for us here in the next 2 weeks when it comes to what's going to happen in the game. I'm almost fully convinced now that we're going to see another twist come up here at the end. And also, it makes me excited because we can only dream. No one has ever won 6 immunity challenges anywhere in the world, not in the US, not locally in South Africa, not in Australia. The record across Australian Survivor US, and also South Africa, all is 5 immunity wins. So that would be very impressive, especially to go back to back to back. That would really, and I mean, we're very much just sort of dreaming at this point, but that would put Chappies in a league of his own when it comes to challenges if he could pull that off, And it's like Kiran said, Nico asked him in this episode, when did you lose control of the game? And he said, well, at some point, you kind of don't count in the fact that someone might win back-to-back-to-back challenges, which really changes the dynamics of what you're trying to achieve. And you'd think that the run will come to an end, but so far it has not come to an end. And Chappies has been impressive just because all of these challenges that they're doing are so different, and somehow he's adapting to all these different skill sets that's required to be able to still win it. So, the only thing we haven't seen, well, I'm trying to think, what have we not seen him win? Because he's winning the puzzles, he's winning the endurance, he's winning the swimming, he's winning so many of the different things here that, I don't know if you watch this at all. I talk about The Challenge quite a lot as well as another TV show that I follow.
Yeah, I do.
I would love for him to be a representative for South Africa on The Challenge. I reckon he would do well.
He would be so great on that show. And let's not also forget, it's amazing with the immunity wins, but he's been winning these rewards too. So his consecutive
all the food
challenge record, I'm not sure what that is, of actually winning rewards and immunity. I don't know what that record is globally, but surely that's also got to be one of the standout records of the season as well. And I also don't know if the 5 that are current records are all consecutive wins, or if they were just 5 in a season, or if they were 5 consecutively. So I think that, Chappies is definitely, as far as I'm concerned, a challenge beast, and it would be fitting for him to be on MTV's The Challenge. I think it would be amazing to see him play that game and represent South Africa and fly our flag quite high. Someone said, if Anela takes Chappies to the final and pulls a woo, I still think that wouldn't be a bad move for Anela, but again, it's all going to come down to how is he going to pitch his story to the jury. And I just think we have to remember that last engagement is critical. That can really make or break someone's game. It could even make or break Chappies if he says the wrong thing. The question also is, how bitter is this jury? I think the jury last season was quite angry. They were so mad. I don't get the sense that it's the same level of bitterness, but there are some people on that jury that are pissed off. So if he can maybe play into that somehow, and really think about his speech, almost do like a dry run in a corner on a rock somewhere in the island while he's looking out at the ocean, and practice, he might be able to pull it off. It's still anyone's game, as far as I'm concerned.
I did want to touch on this as well. In this episode, one of the reasons I really enjoy Anela, while we're on the topic of him, is that he does have some really good commentary sometimes when he's in the confessionals. And in this specific episode, when he goes to the reward challenge here with Chappies and they have the food, and he says that no wonder there's a baby on the way with the amount of noises that Chappies is making, the sounds every time he eats food, I thought was absolute pure gold. And it's why I say it's going to be so tough to choose in the future who of these players would you want to see come back and play the game again, because to me Anela has brought a lot to the show, be it the the whole last minute blunder of telling Kiran where the vote was going to go, eating the chocolate bars on his own, he's been impressive to watch as just the character on the show. I've enjoyed it. And I think that if he does get to the final, I think there is an opportunity for him to win, but he needs to take the right person to the end. I think if he takes Chappies to the end, that will be a blunder, but he might think that him and Nicole will split the old Zumba votes, and he might think that's another reason to take Chappies to the end. But it's going to be very interesting. In my mind, I still don't see Chappies winning this show, because I really feel like if you've won this many immunities, your resume is so big. You have to win out until the end. If you lose somewhere, I feel like they're definitely going to have the guns aiming at him, and they're going to take a shot at him and try and get him out here before the end. Now, towards the last part of the podcast here, Amanda, what we normally do is we have a look at our players left in the game, and also who myself and Riley have still got left in the game, and we do a little bit of a prediction as to how we think things are going to play out towards the end of the game. Who are the people that are sort of in the best position to take this out? So as you can see, I had 2 players coming into this, and Riley had 3 players. He's sort of been in the lead for the last couple of rounds now, but he will be losing Kiran. That will go into the elimination pool here.
You
and
guys
we've got
picked the final 4? That's crazy.
Yeah, we got the final 4. So to give you an idea, Chappies was my number 1 guy, and he was my second overall pick to win the season. I actually had Inesu as my preseason winner pick, and I'm still a massive Inesu fan. I think if she played again, she could do pretty well as well. Tyson, I can't claim and say, hey, I knew Chappies was going to win preseason if he does get there at the end. So, but he was definitely someone that, was my first guy pick, someone that I thought could do really well in the game. So I'm happy to have been right there. But then in the same breath, Anela was my last pick of the guys who still survived, and he's done extremely well, proven me wrong. And it's funny because for Riley, it's the same. Riley picked Nicole as his first female pick, and Tyson was his last pick as well. So we've had our first and our last picks make it to the final 4, which I think is really cool to see that sort of here in the end game. And for us both still to have players on the board at this stage is pretty crazy as well. But if you look at who's left in the game at the moment, Amanda, I think we spoke a little bit about who we think is best placed to win this game. And we can talk through both scenarios now that we've sort of brought the final 2 also up here. If it's a final 3, who would you say at this point is most likely to win this game? And if it's a final 2, who do you think is most likely to win this game? Does it change it for you, or is it the same no matter what?
So I still think Chappies wins. That's just my gut feel. But and the reason I feel that is because I think the final 3 will be Nicole and Chappies and Anela. I think so. Unless Tyson wins immunity, but because he's injured, I don't know if he's got a good chance of beating Chappies, especially since he's got a whole restaurant business that he's opened, and he doesn't even need a sous chef. So I'm not convinced that all of those things are going to work in Tyson's favor. So I do think that's the final 3. If it's a final 2, I think. And Chappies gets to choose. I don't think Chappies takes Anela. I think that would be so silly. He takes Nicole, who I think has already kind of half talked herself out of winning, or talked the jury out of giving her the win. So I think that if it's Chappies and he's got the option, I think he takes Nicole. So to summarize, if it's final 3, I think Chappies wins. If it's final 2, I think Chappies wins.
To be honest with you, you took the words right out of my mouth. What am I doing? You should just replace me on the show moving forward. I do 100% agree with you in your assessment. I was very bullish on Tyson winning this season until this episode. Because for me, the problem that I have is we had 2 kind of negative episodes for Tyson where he was seen as being very confrontational with Chappies, swearing at him and things like that. In this specific episode, he came across again as a bit of a whiner about the fact that Chappies goes and gets his own food and it's unfair, and I say that in the sense that that's how the edit makes it seem. I'm not saying that Tyson is a whiner. I think Tyson is a great guy. I spoke to Kiran specifically about what is it that make people sort of go at each other the way it does in Survivor. And you'll know, as someone that's been there towards the end game, that it gets pretty tough when you're deprived of food and people that, you're probably it's a bit more difficult to filter yourself when certain things and people annoy you when you don't have food. Like I get hangry when I don't eat, you know, and that's why if I ever were to play Survivor, I don't know, like by day 3, I'd probably get booted just because I would be too grumpy. And I think that a lot of this happens in Survivor South Africa. We see that, I know a lot of other shows in Australia and in the US, you don't see confrontations like the ones that we've seen in Survivor South Africa. But I've said it a few times on the show, South Africans are hard people. They fight every day of their life. Like life in South Africa can be tough, you know, and if you put them in a situation like this, where it feels like your life is being taken out of the game and you're literally fighting for your life, these kind of things happen. But that edit has not changed. I would have liked to have seen Tyson being painted in a more positive picture going into this episode, and I haven't seen that switch yet. So for me, because of that, I am now starting, for the first time ever, my rankings are changing as well. I had Tyson as 1, Chappies as 2 for a long time, but I actually now think Chappies going into the end game here. And I hope I don't jinx him, because I've been a massive fan of Chappies this whole season. And I hope, Chappies, that you do pull it out here at the end and that you actually win your way out to the end. I know a lot of people hate it when players win their way to the end, but it's exciting to watch because this guy has been enemy number 1 for a long time now. They've tried to get him out, but they've just been unable to do so. And it's going to paint a massive red target on the next physical person that plays this game in season 9.
Yeah, his game reminds me a little bit of Mike. I can't remember which season Mike won in the US.
Yes.
But he also had to win like everything until the end. And then I wasn't also a fan. But then when the guy keeps winning, you kind of go, oh, that's amazing. Like, you know, just give it to him. So I think that's what Chappies has also been able to do, is kind of convince people, you know, that there's a lot of respect to be given. I have to say that your point about South Africans being tough cookies is a very valid one. I think I said to you that when we were filming my season, there were 7 other countries that were filming it. And there was one challenge where we had to stand on a pole. And I think the record was for all the other countries was like an hour or something. Not for South Africa. We go 3 hours, okay? So that's very indicative of how hard we play this game. And you're right about food. It makes you tasty. It's such a mind game as well. And, you know, so your mind is constantly in game play mode. So you're not sleeping because you're thinking about what you're going to do tomorrow. And you don't eat. And so you don't have a lot of sustenance. You've got a low energy, super lethargic. And then some idiot decides, let's say, to spoil the rice. That is enough just to set you off, and you have a huge conversation and argument. And by the way, you also forget about the cameras. And so now you're doing it on national TV and you have this huge argument and you're like, oh God, did I have to get that upset about a small piece of rice that fell on the ground? So no, that's all 100% completely accurate. And so I have a little bit of empathy when I see people like Tyson,
yeah,
you know,
100%.
say certain things. I do watch as a former player with a little bit more empathy, because I can totally understand why that happens.
Well, talking as a former player, we've got a current player in the chat, Francois Chapman himself, saying, this was fun to watch. Love the energy and appreciate all the kind words, guys. You're both hereby cordially invited to the lawns of Chappie's Diner.
Chappies, I'm so upset. I was supposed to hang out with him like 2 weeks ago at Meryl's house. And I got COVID, so I couldn't go. So
Oh, no.
I'm so bummed I didn't get to come and hang out with you guys. But maybe I'll see you soon. Maybe I'll see you in Cape Town soon. Maybe.
Yeah, things will have to settle down so that I'm allowed to travel internationally again and come and visit South Africa, so I can actually go to Chappies' diner. But if he doesn't open up his own diner, it's going to be an absolute shame after this season, you know, with him having his diner and his potjie as well. No, 100%. Amanda, it's been great talking to you. You've brought some great energy here. I might have to kick Riley out of the podcast in the future and replace him. It's been great talking to you about this season of Survivor South Africa. What else do you currently have going on at the moment? Do you have anything you want to plug, let people know about? Where can they follow you on Instagram and Twitter and all those types of things?
Sure. So I don't have anything else going. I'm actually a business person. So my life is consumed with my job. I'm an accountant, short answer, but the head of internal audit for a financial services industry. So that keeps me completely busy. I did have a flog last season as a former Survivor player, but I actually decided not to do it this round because I feel as though there's so much new, fresh blood out there, and you know, lots of new flogs that have come out. So I've actually quit doing that. But you're welcome to follow me on Instagram. It's just Amanda Hoosen. It's also Amanda Hoosen on Twitter. So I'm happy for you guys to follow me. What I'm really looking forward to, I'm a bit of a travel addict, and I just can't wait for this COVID shit to be over so we can go somewhere. And hopefully that'll be by December. And my wedding anniversary is in December. So we don't know where we're going, but my next dream location is to go to Bora Bora. So if you want to see all the places that we've been and all of that kind of thing, then yeah, pop onto Instagram and you can give me a follow. It was
100%.
amazing to chat to you, Chris. I loved every second of it.
Yeah,
I'll
same.
And Riley anytime. Sorry, Riley, I'm not doing job, but I'll film you anytime.
We'll have you on standby for sure. And just to let you know, sort of put the invite out there as well. If you're ever on this side of the world, if you're ever back in New Zealand or in Australia, just let me know and we'll make something happen. It's been one of the things that I've really there's obviously a lot of things going on in the world at the moment and there's bigger worries, but it really, as one person to another person who's a bit of a vagabond themselves who loves to travel around, it's really been sad not to be able to get around and travel to different locations and see things. So I fully hear you on that. If you can stay online for 1 second as I finish us off here, for everybody that's in the live chat, please put a like on this video. It does help us get noticed on the YouTube algorithm. Last time I checked, we were 2 subscribers short of 1,000 subscribers. So if you can get us over the hump, that would be amazing. And also, I did ask the question here in the beginning. I did a poll and I asked on the live chat, will Chappies equal the record for the most consecutive immunity wins this season? And 83% of people who were in the live chat said yes, he will equal that record for most consecutive wins as well. So I'll end that poll now. We'll be back next week to talk about Survivor South Africa, the next episode. And also on Wednesday, we also will be back, myself and Riley, to talk about Australian Survivor, Brains versus Brawn. That season will have its finale on next Sunday. So there will be 2 podcasts for Australian Brains versus Brawns coming on soon as well. And I also do the challenge. So if you are in this chat and if you do like the challenge, we are live 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time in the US every week on Friday evening to talk about the challenge as well. It's been a great season so far. Who knows? We might have a future challenger from Survivor South Africa as well. If Chappies gets the call, let's hope. There's been some rumors about other Survivor South Africa players potentially getting calls as well. And I'd love to have a couple of people on there if we could get some representation. We've just had our first 2 Africans play in the challenge as well. 2 Nigerian players of Big Brother have been on this season of the challenge. So Tasha and also Esther from Big Brother Nigeria has been played in there. So we do have some representation for Africa in this season as well. And it's been great to see. So guys, it's been great having you in the chat. We'll catch you next time and goodbye.